Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven. Today our special guest is Lindsay and Justin Lee. Founded by wife and husband team Lindsay and Justin Lee, Gazelle Automations is an award-winning Toronto-based film production company redefining practical storytelling through puppetry, model miniatures, and animation. Their preschool series Miikshi on TVOkids earned the 2023 Kidscreen Award for Best Web App Series and the 2022 WIFT-T Award for Best Writing, while Lindsay was named the 2025 Youth Media Alliance Emerging Talent Award recipient. Together, the Lees continue to elevate Canadian children's media by merging imagination, craftsmanship, and heart, and Go Togo remains their proudest ride yet, and that is their latest project we'll be talking about today. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having us, Jeannie.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you started this Gazelle Automations.
Yeah, so we started Gazelle in 2017, actually. So shortly before that, we had worked in the UK on a 50th anniversary Thunderbird special for ITV. And there it was we were recreating original Thunderbird stories which were previously on vinyl records.
If people don't know what Thunderbird is, it's a British show from the 1960s. It's very popular at the time, and I think, well, to this day in many places of the world. But it was 50 years of the show turned 50. We made 3 new episodes. Sorry.
In the original style.
Yeah. And it was like puppets, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Puppets and model miniatures, and the people that worked on it went on to work on Star Wars and Superman and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, wow. Because the original Thunderbirds was all done practically. It was it was marionettes, which were about a third human scale.
And then model miniatures that they shot, with like pyrotechnics and all that kind of stuff. So it was like very for its time, it was quite cutting edge. And then, as I said, all those people went on to work on these big projects afterwards.
They did, and the thing is, it was super cutting edge at the time, but like what we were figuring out was the techniques that they were using, especially for the special effects and the practical effects. People still use those today, and we learned so much from the people that we worked with. I mean, yeah, like they went on to, like, the original crew went on to work on some amazing films, but even the crew that we worked with on these specials,
we brought on for this.
Yeah, we're working on like the new Star Wars film.
Yeah, Rogue One was being filmed while we were making these episodes, so we were actually sharing some crew with Rogue One, and another of our colleagues had just worked on the latest James Bond film. And
one of them came from Weta Workshop in New Zealand, so doing model miniatures for them.
Lord of the Rings. And the Power Rangers movie and a whole bunch of other stuff. And like Weta's probably best known for Lord of the Rings.
So how did you guys meet? Did you guys go to the same school in Canada and then go to the UK?
We did, yeah. So we met in 2006, actually, while we were both students at formerly then Ryerson RTA, TMU RTA. Yeah. So then we were friends, and we worked on the annual RTA Awards segments together, and
there was this award show and they still do it every year for students, where they it's like the Oscars for the kids, for the students. And that's how we met, is that we worked on the kind of pre-taped segments for that. And then you went on and worked on Corner Gas for several years.
Yes, Corner Gas.
Corner Gas, the kind of jewel Canadian sitcom.
Yes. Yeah. I was living out in Regina for a bit, and then Justin was working in VFX and post-production. But we'd always just sort of kept in touch, and yeah, so we
eventually we got together. First, like on a personal level, and then I guess when
on a professional level,
when Thunderbirds happened, we both went to the UK, did that for a bunch of months, and then.
But yeah, basically to go back to how we started. So when we got back from the UK working on Thunderbirds, we thought we learned so much about this type of filmmaking. We really felt the joy and the sort of passion for it. We'd always both been interested in it in some way or another.
Puppets and model miniatures, building things. And
so then when we came back to Canada, we thought, why don't we tell our own stories using these techniques? And that's basically how Gazelle Automation started.
Started in the back of a pizza shop.
Yes.
In Whitby. So
in Whitby.
That's the space that we could afford.
We just looked on Kijiji and we were like, what's,
And the only place we could afford was to rent this tiny room in the back of a pizza shop.
It was quite a commute.
The size of a closet. And, our our longtime collaborator Jeff Mackey, who I went to school with, he, I mean, he was usually it was the three of us in the back of the pizza shop building sets for Miikshi and puppets, and we had a few interns from Sheridan. And some days it got so hot because the pizza oven was going, and it was like summer, so it'd be like 45 degrees, and the landlord, who we were friends with, who was a very nice guy, he couldn't afford to turn on the air conditioning, so it got like stupid hot in there, and that's how we made our like very first Miikshi series.
Yeah.
But tell me a bit about Miikshi. What's that about?
Yeah, so Miikshi actually started we came up with the concept while we were still in England, based on the fact that I was a very, very shy kid. And somehow like the term meek sheep kept popping into our heads.
Oh,
Meek
okay.
sheep. And and then it got shortened to Miikshi.
We turned
fair
it
to
into a
say.
name.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And then we were kind of joking about, like, yeah, like the concept of a really shy sheep, and going like, Baba Miikshi, have you any confidence? No, sir, no, sir, I have no confidence. Yeah.
That's how it began. And it was going to be like a preschool show,
Yeah.
like a really, really baby TV kind of thing. And then before we knew it, she had a jet plane that launched out of her roof, and she was like saving the city of Mabukiville from all these crazy things that were happening. So it kind of evolved into something that was a bit more, what a lot of people said was it was kind of like we took the Muppets and Thunderbirds and mixed it together, which is kind of what it was.
And it started out as just us producing like by ourselves
Mhm.
with Jeff. We did 5 short films. And then
Well, 3 of which were actually fully finished
yeah,
before we partnered with Shaftesbury.
yeah.
Shaftesbury Films, that probably best known for making Murdoch Mysteries and
Oh,
Hudson
okay.
and Rex and shows like that. So we partnered with them,
Yeah.
and then made a whole new 10-part web series.
Which was aimed at preschoolers. However, it's still, like Justin said, she had a jet plane,
Yeah.
she was a scientist, there were elements of the series that, involve those practical effects and those sort of bigger storytelling devices. But yeah, it was a preschool series for TVO. So yeah, so it kind of evolved sort of midway through us working on the short films. It suddenly became like when Shaftesbury came on board, it became a series instead.
I think we forgot to mention she's a scientist.
Yes.
She's a scientist. She's a scientist in a lab coat with thick glasses, and she saves the city every week. That's
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah.
Now, after you have gained the skills of making and producing your shorts, like you chose to do children's, like instead of adult material. Like I was thinking like Thunderbirds, and then I remember what, Team America, which is pretty raunchy, but I mean,
Mhm.
like there's so many things you could do with puppets. Like, did you conscientiously choose to go towards children materials, or?
I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, Team America, which I do find really funny. Obviously, it's a big parody of Thunderbirds, but Thunderbirds was made as a family series in the 60s. And to this day, it's interesting, even though it's so old, kids still find the thing and they still enjoy it. But I mean, obviously it's like 60 years old now. It's quite old.
Yeah.
Um, Lindsay and me, like our sensibilities, we don't like, I mean, even though the new show that we're about to talk about, Go Togo for CBC, is a preschool show and it's aimed at really young kids, our like kind of our innate storytelling sensibilities, the stuff that we love watching as adults, is that stuff that sits right between. So
Mhm.
things like Wallace and Gromit or Coraline
Oh,
or
yes.
Isle of Dogs, or there are things that like a kid could, or Nightmare Before Christmas. There's like, I know I just listed a lot of stop motion, but there's a lot of stuff in the animation realm. I also mentioned Star Trek Prodigy. If there are Star Trek fans out there who haven't seen Star Trek Prodigy, it's a great show.
Mhm.
But it's aimed, you could argue that show is almost aimed at like preteen or kind of teen audience, but like Wallace and Gromit is aimed at nobody specifically.
Mhm.
It looks
Yeah.
kind of kid-like, but then tons of adults love it because it operates at a bunch of different levels. It's cute, but it's also complex. It's dark at times. It's kind of scary at times. That's kind of where we like to sit. So I think Miikshi ended up always on some level being a project like that, even though once we partnered with Shaftesbury and eventually TVOkids, we did have to adjust the show to work with a preschool audience.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, tell me a little bit about Go Togo. That's like your latest and greatest right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Go Togo is specifically a preschool show. So basically after we did Miikshi, um, it was the pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all,
That pandemic, yes.
exactly.
Yes,
So
everyone remember that.
everyone remembers, what, and in a way we don't remember what were we doing during the pandemic because it was all a blur. But the CBC had put out this call for pitches for something called the Creative Relief Fund. So it was their way of saying, hey, artists, we know you're struggling right now. We can offer a little bit of development funding for ideas that are selected for the Creative Relief Fund. So we had just visited right before I guess everything locked down, we had just visited a place called the Halton Radial Railway Museum in Guelph, Ontario. And it's a really cool place. So it's basically like a subway and
Transit museum.
a public transit retirement home,
Yeah.
basically. It's like where, old subway cars go when they're decommissioned, old streetcars, old buses.
And the
so they're
public
all-
can come and see them.
yeah, so they're all there and you can visit them and you can see them, you can walk on board, you can learn the history. And we just had the best time. We were fascinated. We love public transit. We were just fascinated by seeing all these old vehicles and even some of them that we remembered from childhood. We were like, oh, I might have ridden this subway car. We see the old ads from like 1999 when like the Scotiabank, well, now Scotiabank Theater just opened. Anyway, so it kind of inspired us to think about like, what if these vehicles had personalities? And sometimes you look at a vehicle and you see that an expression on its face. You see like the two eyes, like the headlights and like the grill, and you're like, it looks like it has a face.
And I think a lot of people look at cars and see that. And I think cars and vehicles are kind of designed that way. But we saw a bus that looked a little bit unfortunate. And we were like, well, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like an anxious, unfortunate bus or a really eager subway train or that kind of thing. So that started making us think about what we could do as a show.
And so we pitched that to the Creative Relief Fund to CBC, and our pitch got accepted, and we got a little bit of development funding to just to basically at the beginning it was to write a show Bible, and produce a demo.
Mhm.
So we produced a demo of about 30 seconds, was it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. Yeah.
It was a long time
Sure,
ago.
it was a long time
We
ago.
actually just used a bunch of Miikshi stuff because we had it, and we wanted to make this, proof of concept as budget friendly as possible. So we actually had a friend. We worked with a friend to build a subway car character who ended up becoming Togo, and it was like the prototype of that was what was in this thing. And then we had all this set dressing, like the buildings, the grass, everything else was from Miikshi. And we shot this thing and we sent it to CBC and they really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And then
And so it was a couple years of, more development. So, because in TV, that's how it works. Like it often, if not always, takes
Years.
years for a
Years.
show because it's like they ask for more scripts, they ask for a new Bible, they ask for concept art.
And then sometimes
they-
what broadcasters need changes.
Mhm.
So like you might be going down one path and then, it'll shift to, oh, we want a preschool math show. So actually in this, that is what happened.
Sorry, wait a minute, you're cutting out.
Actually,
Oh,
I think
can
we're
you
frozen.
hear us?
Sorry, yeah, you're frozen. Okay, now you're
Oh,
back.
there we go.
Okay.
You're back now too. Okay, great.
Okay.
know,
Go back
we-
to you talked about something about math.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think what we were saying is that during the development phase of a TV show, of any TV show, what broadcasters want can sometimes change. And in the case of Go Togo, it was originally pitched as just kind of a fun adventure set in. It was all going to be subway cars at one point. And then they asked us, what would you say if we asked for a preschool math show? And preschool math isn't just 2 + 3. It's like above and below and inside and outside. And it's like those kinds of concepts. And so we started to integrate that into the DNA of the show. So by the time the show actually came out, it was, well, at least season 1 was about above and below and,
It's
order.
the foundations of logical thinking is how preschool math is presented. So it's like any sort of concept that that requires you to think about things in like, you know, sort of like spatial awareness terms or, you know, logic terms. So yeah, above and below, in and out.
Always, sometimes, never. That's a really tricky one.
Probability.
Yeah, probability, like how likely something's to happen. But this is stuff that kindergarten kids are taught.
Yeah.
So we were working with Ontario curriculum and then integrating it into the show. So you have these brightly colored, you know, Japanese kawaii inspired subway, bus, and streetcar. And then they were, you know, having these adventures and trying to figure out, you know, one episode, Togo has to figure out how to count backwards, right? Because he's never done it before. Well, he doesn't think he has anyway. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then in season 2, it's a bit different. It's not math anymore, right?
Yeah, so we were able we talked to CBC, and actually this was based on feedback that we had been given when we sort of briefly took the show out to market in late 2024 after it came out. Like
We say briefly because we basically went right into making season 2.
Yeah.
It was so,
we were
like the breath that we had to catch was so quick before we were like crewing up and building things or whatever. But as you said, like there was this really brief window,
yeah.
and we started trying to like share season 1 with on the global market, and people loved it. Broadcasters were like, "This looks awesome! Like we really, really love it." But then the request or the thought was, what about doing, you know, stories that go beyond preschool math? So we then expanded the show to be about school readiness. So that's anything like including socio-emotional. So we now encompass, like season 2 does a few episodes that are more like season 1, which is like, you know, matching shapes and stuff like that. But then we also did ones about like FOMO. We had an episode where Togo is like, he has fear of missing out. His friends go off to like the island, and he's really kind of imagining all the fun they're having without him. And we did ones about like jealousy of making new friends, like, you know, the bus
Oh, yeah.
Wheeler. Yeah, exactly. The kind of stuff that happens to kids and adults. Like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, Wheeler becomes friends with the new character who's a ferry boat, Mary the Ferry, and then Stella the streetcar is jealous. So we get all these kind of new interesting stories.
Like all the things that kids will experience when they start school, you know, because sometimes it's like, you know, at home they have a certain experience, and then when they start school, it's like all these different interpersonal dynamics start to, you know, come into their lives, and they meet different people, they figure out who they are, and it's like that was the sort of moment we wanted to capture in season 2, that like, you know, I've just started school, like what is my world now?
I also think it was cool that with the season 2 stories, because we weren't just doing preschool math, crew members who had young children were identifying with the stories, saying, "Oh yeah, my kid just did this last week," or crew members were just identifying with the stories because, as I said, jealousy is something that happens to adults. FOMO is something that happens to adults. So like you had a much kind of wider universal connection with certain
Cool.
people, with our crew, and I think beyond that.
Now, the whole show is built from handcrafted miniatures. So, what's one behind the scenes detail from season's 2 production that you think people might be surprised to learn about?
It's all made in camera. I mean, I
Yeah.
think obviously we which I think is cool, because when people see it, their first reaction is, "Oh, it's CG," but then very quickly they go, "Oh, no, I don't think it's CG." And there's something, I think, warmer. I love CG, by the way. I don't want to knock CG. I worked in CG. I still work in CG as well, and we did use some CG for some aspects of the show, but most of what you're seeing when you watch Go Togo is a tiny set. It's actually right over there. It's a tiny, tiny set where we drop a little camera. It's like a special periscope lens that's hung from the ceiling. And then there's a computer that controls the camera movement. So we program all of it. And then it moves through this tiny world while our prop operators are like performing the characters. So it's actually all done with these really, like, almost feel like we should have had one ready to like hold in front of us. They're
That's so
really
good.
tiny. Yeah.
Another like specifically interesting fact about, so Mary the ferry boat is our new she's a boat character, and we had an actual water tank for her, so she's actually in the water, but she actually drives on wheels. So the tank was shallow enough that Mary had wheels that would touch the bottom, and she would move through the water like a tank.
Yeah.
So she's a boat, but she's actually secretly a tank.
Secretly a tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, what do you think? Okay, thinking about your Go Togo and Miikshi, like, what do you think was the biggest challenge in doing all of these projects?
I think anytime you're doing something that's new like this, because it's all like we are using, as we said before, techniques that we did start to learn more of when we went to England, but we're still, every time we say, oh, now we want to do this, we have a whole set of new challenges. I mean, I'm trying to think of any specific one because there's so many. Like
So
for
many
okay,
terrible things happen.
here's an example. Like for Go Togo, so our kind of mandate for Go Togo was the characters have to be adorable and cute, and then the other thing was I said I want to be able to see very clearly who is talking, and the reason I said that was because there are a bunch of vehicle shows, but only a few other vehicle shows prior to ours that was done with model miniatures. So obviously the obvious one is Thomas the Tank Engine that comes to mind, which was
Yeah.
started in the 80s. Theodore Tugboat, which is a Canadian production that was made in Nova Scotia. And there was also Dream Street, I think it was called. Tugs, that was another famous one in the UK. All of them had a narrator. And so it would say like, oh,
Yes.
Thomas said this or Theodore said that, and then they would do a bit of voice.
Yeah.
We decided no narrator for ours. We're just going to have it happen in real time. So it's not a story that's being told. And I wanted to be able to for the audience to immediately say, oh, Togo's talking, Wheeler's talking. And for that, we decided to make their mouths light up,
Yeah.
almost kind of like hazard lights on a car or on a bus. Building the system that would allow us to pre-record the kids' voices, because we have young kids voicing the characters, like 7, 8, 9 years old. So being able to take the pre-record and then have a computer
To sync it, yeah, sync the
Thank you.
voice.
Still have that cough from weeks ago. Yeah, sync the voice, and it had to all be done wirelessly. So that was actually much trickier than we thought it would be. And then we have basically a lip sync operator sitting at a computer over there. And then if the director says, oh, I want Togo to almost talk over Wheeler, we can do that right away. And then hit play, film the scene, and all their mouths talk in time with the dialogue. So that was actually pretty tricky to do.
Yeah, and I think that we didn't have that challenge on Miikshi, obviously, because they were hand puppets.
Yeah.
But I think between across the two series, and the type of filmmaking we do, it's like part of, I think, everybody's challenge on the show, because we work with so many amazingly talented artists in our art department and everybody behind the scenes. But it's like all of us just it's so much fun, right, to work with miniature things. And I think all of us suffer from the like, oh, one more thing, I want to add one more thing, to make this perfect. And it's like, at a certain point you have to be like, okay,
Yeah.
we don't have time, like we have to just call it and be like, okay, it's good enough. But I think it's like you always want to make it better. You always want to add one more little detail, and that's the thing. I think we've kind of gotten better at it as we've worked through Go Togo, which was on a much tighter schedule than Miikshi was. We
true? I feel like the
so.
the Miikshi series, the TVO series, was pretty tight.
But
it was crazy tight.
We did 58 episodes altogether, so it's like that was a lot of episodes.
Oh, that's true.
And it was like, okay, and we had a much bigger crew, and so just sort of basically because we sit in this pocket of like animation and live action at the same time, and the way that we operate on set is more like a live action set.
But then it looks like animation.
So,
yeah, the unions have had a hard time categorizing what our show is. Yeah, it's some of the unions we worked with said it's live action. Some of them said it's animation. It's kind of both.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's fun. It's a lot of fun on set, but also, as you said, the crew, everybody works really hard. Like it's very, very detail oriented, very specific work.
Okay, so one last question. Like, what is one piece of advice you would give to young creators who dream of working in such a media?
I would say just do it for fun. Like, do it in your spare time. Use all the resources that are available now. I mean, there's so many great resources. I sound
more than we ever had.
There's so many great resources, but it's like, it's like there really are. And I think, any chance you get, just make stuff. And because that is how you get better. That's how you learn. Even just watching other people make stuff, that's how you learn. That's how we learn, on Thunderbirds, like watching the people we worked with at work.
Shows make pros.
Shows make pros.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Okay. First time I heard that. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thanks,
Beanie. It was so great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.